The UFC launches into a new decade with the highly anticipated return of the notorious Conor McGregor, who meets UFC superstar Donald Cowboy Cerrone at UFC 246. The Octagon welcomes back McGregor after a 15-month hiatus. The former two-division champion looks to prove once again just why he is the biggest draw in the game.
Surprise, surprise, the king is back!
However, this isn't Cowboy's first rodeo under the bright lights. A relentless competitor with a never-say-die attitude, Cerrone boasts an unrivaled UFC finishing record and knows he has the firepower to take out the Irishman.
Conor McGregor is doing it.
The legions of fans can expect fireworks as we kick off 2020 with an almighty bang. Hello and welcome to UFC Inside the Octagon. We're back for a new decade. John Gooden, Dan Hardy, Conor's back. Cowboy Cerrone never left. Dan, it is a massive fight to kick things off this year in 2020. How exciting. I think the big storyline here is the fact that the biggest name in mixed martial arts, one of the biggest names in sports, he's back to work.
Yes, he is. And steps straight in against the veteran in Cowboy as well. Someone that can really challenge his game in a lot of different ways. And what we expect from Conor, as always, an aggressive, flamboyant start, you know, big, powerful left hands and all that kind of stuff. But it's how he goes about the work and how Cowboy responds to it, which is really the most fascinating. What we've seen from Cowboy all the way through his career is we've seen great knockouts, we've seen great submissions as well. He's one of those guys that's got a full skill set in every range, and it just depends on which kind of skill set he's polished and brings to the table for that fight, and also how he looks at Conor McGregor and what he expects from McGregor and how his skill set interacts with that. Because I would say, of the two of them, Cowboy's the one with the options.
Yeah.
Conor, we kind of know what he's going to do. Cowboy's the one that kind of has to fit his pieces around Conor to deal with that.
OK, I'm very much excited about your analysis, but we must start with the facts and the stats. Couple of things here which I think we should be looking at. We know that Cowboy's later on in his career, but he keeps himself so youthful.
He does.
Does that 36 number even count? But the most interesting thing, he is the bigger man. Everyone surrenders a reach disadvantage, I guess, against Conor.
It is. I mean, it is strange that Conor always seems to have a reach advantage over his opponents. But again, we've talked about it before. It's a physicality thing. You know, you look at Cowboy, he's very kind of upright with long arms but narrow shoulders.
Last time you called someone a fish finger.
A fish finger,
We're not doing that for a Cowboy, though, right?
It's too late. We've already done it. He's a Cowboy fish finger. He's just got that kind of straight-up narrow body, whereas if you look at Conor McGregor, he's got that way of the Dragon Bruce Lee Cobra spread going on, and that adds reach to his arms. So, you know, he's going to be able to get to Cowboy. He's got long arms, and he uses that reach very, very well. The disadvantage, obviously, with Cowboy being slightly higher is that he's going to be trying to lean away from those shots a little bit, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of works into McGregor's favour. The height of Cowboy is more about the length of his legs, in my opinion, and that is a big key. Because, obviously, all the stats we've got, that's the one that stands out to me.
Yeah.
7 KOs from kicks is, I mean, that's his secret weapon in this fight for me.
I watched the marvellous documentary series that Cowboy's team have put together, and his head coach has, in my eyes, maybe oversimplified things down to Conor McGregor has a big left hand and a first round.
Yes.
Is that an oversimplification in your eyes as well? And, you know, how does, therefore, this fight start to look in the early goings?
It is absolutely an oversimplification, but I think that the coaches that said that know that. I think Cowboy hearing that would know that, and I think Conor would write that off if he heard that said about him. There's so much more to his left hand. Yes, he has one main technique, and his whole game is kind of built around it. But the game that surrounds his left hand is good enough to make sure that left hand lands consistently. In the fights against, say, Brandao, against Poirier, against Mendes, he's the aggressive fighter. He's pushing people back against the fence. That's what I expect from him in this fight. The reason for that is because one thing that we can guarantee on with Cowboy is that he's a slow starter. You know, he does have some good first rounds, but generally he's under pressure in the first round. And Conor's great at scooping people into the fence. And the way that he does it, let's just have a quick look at this footwork, because most southpaws, let's just use this position for an example. Most southpaws, where are we? Where's Conor's? So there's Conor's dangerous weapon, right? There's Conor's left hand.
Apparently the only one.
Well, apparently. But if you're a southpaw fighter, you want your opponents moving towards that punch because that circles them onto the power punch. It's a common sense thing to do. What we see Conor doing, which is different, is we see him forcing people away. We see him forcing Brandao along the fence here as he's trying to land that left hand. And I think there's a good reason for it, but it's worth noting that it is an unorthodox way of delivering the technique. The way he cuts the distance down is by using kicks. So he's got the body kick and the spin kick. We see the spin kick here when Brandao tries to get a bit too far out, just slows him down, force him back against the fence. But still, Conor's forcing him away from his left hand as he's punching him. This is the reason why. So watch this. As he's got Brandao backed up against the fence here, still punching over towards the right-hand side, away from his left power punch. As the knockout punch lands, the knockdown punch lands, it's important to note where Conor's foot is against the fence. This is why, in my opinion, he throws the punch like this. Look at Conor's stance. Look how close he is. Most southpaws would want to be at this angle, forcing you into the fence, trying to get you to go that way to move towards the power hand. But Conor's punching so far over his reach, his toes are up, his big toe's actually curled under there. There's no purchase on that foot at all. So as he's throwing that full power punch over the top, that back foot drags. And because he overextends it, watch that back foot drag, drags, bags into the fence, bang, stubs his toe on the fence there. Look at his angle. I mean, I know he's hit him and he's hurt him now, but still, it's an unusual position to be. My theory is the reason he does this is because he overthrows his left hand. He likes to have the fence at this side so he can't have people circling to that vulnerable side. He's always punching them into the direction that he's moving them, which for boxing doesn't really make a lot of sense. But for mixed martial arts, we're still trying to understand the angles of the octagon. In a boxing ring, you're going to be stuck in a 90-degree corner. In here, you've got 135 degrees, so there's more breathing room. This is his last fight against Khabib, as you can see. First punch he threw. Khabib circling, Conor just cuts straight across, takes control of the centre of the octagon again. Like we talk about it with DC, that grind cycle he puts people in. This is Conor's cycle. This is the cycle that he forces people in until he makes them vulnerable for the left hand. Everything that he does, yes, he's got a big left hand. That's his main thing. But everything he does in his game supports that. They're all supplementary techniques to allow him to land that left hand.
Sort of pyramids up to
exactly
that big left hand.
It's a big foundation, a wide foundation of techniques with one key technique at the top.
So an aggressive Conor McGregor comes forward in the early opening exchanges, and as you said earlier, Cowboy perhaps a little bit more timid in the early goings typically. How does he respond?
I think Cowboy smothers it. And I think we've seen this in previous fights, particularly at welterweight. Something that he's gotten very good at dealing with bigger, powerful fighters is that instead of backing up and trying to find space in an octagon, which is very difficult to do with Conor, he meets them, fire blanket that power, get as close to it as possible, clinch them, force them to tie up, try and get the takedown. So think about the benefits in this. If he's forcing Conor to wrestle, we know that that fatigues Conor. We've seen it happen in previous fights. Cowboy will be leaning on that. So even if he's not successful with the takedown, I think he can find himself in the clinch. But it's the timing, because the thing with Cowboy, again, is experience, and this is his UFC debut. The reason I pulled this is because people have always underestimated his ground game.
Yeah.
In his first UFC fight, he was getting caught by some powerful punches against Paul Kelly, took him down and got the submission. The timing of these takedowns is really what's the key, because you can imagine Conor McGregor is going to be aggressive. He's going to be throwing over the top, which if Cowboy gets his timing right, he's going to be able to level change under that. And also the way that Cowboy gets his takedowns. I'm going to break this one down for you. It's the way that Cowboy gets his takedowns. It's quite consistent. And it's quite useful when you're fighting a southpaw. So here we are against Rick Story. Now, Rick Story is actually going to step through and he's going to become an orthodox fighter with the punch that he throws. But the technique's still the same. Cowboy reaches for the far leg and puts his head on the same side, which I don't know many other fighters that do that. Usually they go the opposite way. The benefit in this is that it allows Cowboy to get all of his body weight on his opponent. So watch this. So as he steps in here, right, this is his position. That's the position that he wants, okay? He's got one hand on the hip. The head's on the far side. So he's pinching the hips here, controlling the hips. One side with his arm, one side with his head. But his main focus is this arm here.
Like a trip.
Exactly that. It's a barrier for that leg. Once he's got that wrapped up, he keeps that nice and tight to him, and then he forces them over it. And the benefit in him having this as a high elbow, look how high that elbow is. He can drive them towards that base, but take that base away at the same time. So he's collapsing them onto it. And Patrick Cote, Charles Oliveira, he hit them with that takedown and put them down straight away. Story's a good wrestler, as we know. So Story tries to get out of this, and Cowboy does a great job of controlling him. Drive, pull him over that leg. Look how he's elevating that leg. And Story knows what's happening. He's trying to defend this. He's posted his arm. He's trying to keep on his feet, and he's still getting driven over. And as the camera angle changes, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Because the position, there we go. Cowboy's got several different controls in this position, right? The first control that he's got is this hand here, the main one. He's pulling up with this hand, taking that base away. He's also pulling in with this hand to keep himself close to his opponent's body, right? So he's got two hooks on the side of the body, pulling him into his opponent. But he's also got his body weight going down into his opponent. So his chest, his shoulders, his head position is all driving down into his opponent. So he's taking the base away, he's collapsing him down and driving him over the base that he's removing. It's a really nice technique, and what you'll see is, because Cowboy reaches for that far side, Conor tends to defend that leg very well. But if Cowboy can get close enough to start driving him over that, I think it can cause him some problems. And again, as I said, the takedown might not necessarily be the goal. The clinch work and the grappling might be the goal. But if Cowboy does get him to the floor, we know Cowboy's very dangerous. And in his fight against Hernandez, we saw him adapt it slightly. This is a really nice, steps in and wraps the near side leg, trips the outside leg. But the same principle, he's still driving him down over that base. Didn't need to remove the leg this time because he was already, on the seat of his pants. But the technique's still the same. A lot of the stuff that we've seen Conor do in the past in his takedown defense will be applicable to that, but it will still put Cowboy in a position where he can exploit it, I think.
OK, so with Cowboy and his takedowns, if he's successful, we've seen numerous submissions throughout his curriculum vitae, so I'm sure you're going to show us a couple of how they finished.
Yeah, and what we've seen at welterweight is some variety in his submissions as well. The Charles Oliveira triangle was beautiful. Watch this. Watch this control. Steps over with his left leg and sips straight to his back.
Lovely.
Really nice work, and a fast tap as well. That must have been a hell of a squeeze. Being on his back, snatches a submission against Mike Perry, and he almost avoided the slam there by hooking the leg. Wasn't quite quick enough, but this is the technique that Conor's got to watch out for. We know he's vulnerable to it when he gets tired, when he shot a takedown against Nate, he got caught in a rear naked choke. Obviously, the Khabib fight as well. Cowboy's got excellent rear naked chokes. Great at softening people up, great at hurting people and then jumping on a rear naked choke as well. So it's not even like he's got one route of doing this. He's got several different routes of landing the rear naked choke. And I feel like if he forces Conor down to the floor, Conor's going to eventually give his back like he did against Khabib, because he's going to be trying to get up. Yeah. Conor's got excellent scrambles. Yeah. The scrambles will force him to get back to his feet, though, and that's really where Cowboy's going to be taking the back.
So we've kind of put to bed about that underestimated ground game of Cowboy. Can we actually say Conor is not a bad grappler? He's not a bad wrestler, and we've seen a lot of evidence of this now. Yeah, he's got such a great left hand and a lot of other great striking tools, but I think we've got to start really giving him some recognition for his ability to grapple. Yeah,
I agree. He is a good grappler, and in the times we've seen him on the ground, the little glimpses that we've seen are very smooth, very slick movements. It's always the same thing. When you've got one thing that stands out about your game that's so strong, everyone compares every other part of your game to that one thing.
Right.
So every part of Conor McGregor's game isn't comparable to his left hand because that's so effective, but that doesn't discount how effective his ground game is. Less ground game in this fight, more takedown defense, I would say. I think Cowboy's going to try and smother him. I think Cowboy's going to try and clinch him. Conor does excellent work. Anti-clinch, gets his hips away, good head position, good hand position, hand fighting, wrist fighting, all of that kind of stuff. Great scrambling, great takedown defense. We saw the same thing against Khabib as well. Like the strength that he was showing, the balance and stability he was showing when he was getting taken down. Look at this. I mean, this is really, really nice work. It was somewhat invalidated because the takedown was eventually finished.
Sure.
But no one was defending takedowns against Khabib like this, especially in the first round.
And who's going to pursue a takedown like Khabib does?
No one is. No one is. And this is strong. Look at this. Look how strong this positioning is. Like, still doesn't hit the floor. Still, his shorts don't touch the floor at all. That's good, strong positioning. And you've got to think he did how much wrestling for the Khabib fight? Even if he's not done any wrestling for this fight, that's all still in the bank. Yeah, it's all still in the bank. And I feel like that's going to be happening. I feel like if Cowboy shoots in, the takedowns will be denied, especially the first, after he's defended a couple, it'll get easier to defend, so then Cowboy just starts to stepping into the clinch, like we saw him do against Robbie Lawler. There are so many, this is the thing with Cowboy's game. Like, you stop one problem, and he gives you 2 or 3 others to deal with. And that's where I'm really excited to see how Conor deals with someone like Cowboy, because there are so many different things that Cowboy can throw at him.
Massive fight, so much more analysis coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. So, Dan, give us a quick recap of this big headliner for UFC 246.
OK, so Conor, being the fighter that we know him as, he's going to be aggressive. He's going to come out, try and take the centre. Cowboy being a slow starter, I think, reinforces that decision. So he'll push him back. He'll try and start landing that left hand, and he'll keep him in position with the techniques that he uses, the body kicks, the spin kicks, and then the shorter range punches. But it's all about landing that left hand and forcing somebody to move away from it. So Cowboy being under pressure, he's going to start level changes, he's going to start working takedowns. Submissions, if he gets to the floor, we know Cowboy's got great submissions, but Conor has also got great takedown defense, good scrambling, good ability to get back to his feet. So that is where we find ourselves in the clinch, and this is where Cowboy does his good work.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. So as you're alluding to, maybe he hasn't finished the fight with the submission just yet. He's in that mid-range, and we've seen that Cowboy has many weapons. If that takedown doesn't work, he can go back to his striking.
Yes, and sometimes we've even seen him step in for like a lazy takedown just so he can come up into the clinch.
Right.
I wouldn't even be surprised if we see some of that. Beautiful work clinching Mike Perry, but again, it's more to smother his attack than anything. Aggressive, powerful punches that are trying to take your head off. Same thing here with Hernandez. There was so much trash being talked going into this one. Hernandez really stacked the odds against him. But Cowboy did great work clinching him, working knees to the body, working elbows as well, chipping away at him, beating him up. Working the body of McGregor as well is going to be useful. If there are questions around his cardio, that's going to be one thing that Cowboy can work. And the stuff he did against Robbie Lawler, in my opinion, is probably the best clinch work that he did, because he was chaining things together. It was knees, it was elbows, then he starts adding kicks onto the end of it. And the kicks, the high kicks, is where I see him causing Conor McGregor the biggest problems, because Conor's great in the clinch. He's good hand fighting, good control. When he steps out, he has this nice kind of stylized step out where his chin's up, where his chin's down, but his head's up. Yeah, the traditional Conor McGregor posture. If you think Cowboy's pushing forward in that clinch and then he just throws that high kick out there, even if it's landing on the guard, you know, eventually the one on Hernandez landed on the guard and still knocked him down.
Yeah.
There's power in those kicks. And I think that making the most of that gap in Conor McGregor's game where we don't see him capitalising on the long-range clinch breaks, I think Cowboy can do some damage.
Let's circle back to a couple of the points that we were saying and kind of answering Cerrone's coach. He's only a left hand, this, that, and the other. Show us why he's way more than that and some of the other weapons that we've seen from McGregor. OK,
well, if he's all about the left hand, then you don't have to think of any other techniques. There's nothing else to think about. But it's not just a left hand. He's strategic in the way that he breaks someone down. Picking at the body, working the body, jabbing, touching, just constantly giving people other things to think about. What you know from yourself from sparring is if you get caught with a couple of shots to the body, the next time you see someone move, your instinct is to cover your body, which then opens up the left hand to the head. Cowboy, we know, is weak to the body. He has been punished to the body in the past. Cowboy's got a scar right down his midsection. He had an abdominal surgery after an accident that he had, and there's a weakness in his body. And I think Conor is the smart enough fighter to be able to go, right, I can exploit that weakness to the body to start opening up the head shots. And, I mean, even in the Khabib fight, he's bowling these power shots to the midsection. And Khabib's even acknowledging. If you start adding that, you know, Teddy Atlas calls it water in the basement. I think it's a really nice phrase.
Right.
We say money in the bank. Teddy Atlas, water in the basement. Yeah. You're slowing this guy down. Conor, I would say, would know that Cowboy can fight hard for 5 rounds because of this experience that he's got. He knows how to rest. He also knows, you know, where to find his opportunities to put the pressure on. So if Conor can take some of that out of the tank, work in the body, and I'm not saying that Cowboy won't be doing the same thing to Conor, because if I'm Cowboy, I'm doing the same thing. But there's definitely a vulnerability for Cowboy there that Conor can exploit.
Well, let's transfer back to Cowboy then, and he holds the record for the number of knockouts stemming for head kicks. Show us some of that, Gold. Yeah,
well, this for me, this is my favourite Cowboy playlist that we've put together. And the reason it's so good is because the variety in it. And the same thing you always expect from Cowboy. If he's doing rear naked chokes, he's got 5 or 6 different entries to the rear naked choke. Same thing with the kick. And what's beautiful about the kick is that it's disguised because of the way that he throws it, but it's also disguised because of the techniques that he throws before. Now, that is a work of art technique. Look at that. Every punch lands, all 3, sets up the head kick. But the punches move his opponent onto the head kick, right? Everything that he did in that scenario, right? Head to body to uppercut, Story's head's moving in the direction of the right head kick that he's going to throw. Every single one of these techniques is the same thing. Even if the punch doesn't land, he throws something out there that gets a reaction that forces his opponent's head towards his foot. It's a a cruel thing to do, but it works beautifully. Watch this. This is Matt Brown. He's gonna flick the lead hand out, and you can see Matt Brown react. Now, we get two reactions out of Matt Brown here, because he's also expecting the body kick, because Cowboy's landed a few body kicks in this fight. Matt Brown's weak to the body. You know, these patterns persist all the way through. So we're watching Cowboy's lead hand. We're watching his jab hand. No intention of throwing it. Just flicks it out there. But watch the reaction that he gets. So as the punch goes out, no intention of landing it, he gets the reaction, and his head's still open both times, right? And this is consistent all the way through Cowboy's career. Beautiful work here, same thing with Matt Brown. Watch from the other angle. This is really nice. So Matt Brown stepped in with a jab to the body, and he can see that Cowboy's throwing a counter jab to the head, so he's dipped his head towards the kick again. Bang. His feints with his hands do half of the work for him. I wouldn't say he's the most flexible of fighters on the card, but the way that he throws this kick comes straight up, almost like he's throwing a knee and extending it, a bit like Robert Whittaker. This is where Conor's got to be watching out, because Conor likes to have that wide guard, but he also likes to move his head and get off the centre line. When he gets his hands down, he's moving his head. If Cowboy starts flicking those techniques out and Conor's leaning from one side to the next to escape that punch, a kick will be following it. Cowboy's not throwing the punches to land the punches. He's throwing them to set the head up for the kick.
Let's spotlight Conor for a second. And he said that he had only a half-baked camp against Khabib. He didn't respect the training and his coaches perhaps as much as he should do. His words, not mine. And now we've heard from his coaches saying, best ever camp. Best we've ever seen him look. He's happy, etc., etc. That, as a fan of mixed martial arts, that excites me.
Prompting change from a loss is always a good thing. If he kept things the same as they were in the Khabib training camp, I would be more worried, because it didn't work out. I mean, I know he's fighting a very different opponent, but I still like to see fighters look to make changes, even after a victory. So it doesn't surprise me, as Conor, as a student of the game, would be trying to find ways of improving, you know, reaching out to coaches and stuff for help, and trying to figure out how he can better equip himself for, you know, for his comeback. But at the same time, it's the rhetoric that I would expect from someone that lost. Oh, wait, it wasn't a great training camp, but this training camp's been the best ever.
Okay.
Right? If he loses against Cowboy, we might hear, yeah, but this training camp wasn't great, but the next one's going to be the best ever. A part of me does write some of that off, because I know they're the things that he should be saying. But at the same time, I think Conor's honest enough, like he was when he lost to Nate Diaz. You know, that was one of the most impressive things about his whole career for me, was that post-fight interview. He was very matter-of-fact about it.
Yes.
You know? And I think that he has the clarity of mind, at least with the people around him, that are honest enough with him to keep him grounded.
Yeah.
This is what you need to do.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't do it for the Khabib fight. Going forward in this year, the challenges are only going to get bigger. You know, the Khabib rematch is not going to be any easier than the first fight. So they've got to start putting those things in place. And I feel like this will be the best McGregor that we've seen because of the Khabib loss.
Yeah, and I invest more in what he's saying because of what you said, the way that he's handled his losses in the past. I don't think there's any reason to mislead or lie. And I think that's why we should definitely be getting even more excited for this massive blockbuster main event. I can't wait. Dan, thank you very much for your thoughts. Keep the conversation going using the hashtag InsideTheOctagon, tweet at UFC Europe. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back on the next pay-per-view.